Shawn McCarthy. I work at a company called Manulife, and I like to call myself the chief archaeologist. I spend most of my time doing things like software intelligence and uncovering all of the hidden assets within the organization. Why? So that we can have a conversation around what we want to do with our portfolio. The most important thing in understanding where you want to go is where you're coming from. So it'll be near impossible to modernize any part of your portfolio if you don't have a good understanding of the applications, the capabilities, and how those tie to customer experiences, and where you want to be, which is kind of that digital leader, that digital transformation company. How do you get from point A to point B? You have to know what parts of your portfolio are in dire need of care and feeding to be modernized, that enable those experiences. So without that archaeology step, without uncovering the complexity of your software solutions that may be custom built, maybe some things that you bought off the shelf, maybe through a merger and acquisition, you've got all of these wonderful assets that deliver capabilities that make you successful in whatever business that you're in. And that success, that continued success, requires some level of insights and keeping those things healthy. So the application health of your portfolio starts with the archaeology to tell you what the health of your portfolio is so that you can make it more healthy. Yeah, Abhishek and I started it at the same time at the beginning of the pandemic, and at that time I was really hardcore into the archaeology phase. Right now, 3 years later, I'm focusing more in what are the most important application blueprints that we need to go after. But in the beginning, there wasn't a lot of documentation. We had large applications, I think at the time, say 700 applications, and there wasn't a lot of artifacts that said this is how the subsystems work. You know, when I started in IT, we used to have these binders that would go through all of the process maps and kind of explain the software solutions that you would work on. And, you know, albeit we had to do a lot of reading, there was almost a better onboarding process. Now, blow forward 25 years later, sometimes we document things, sometimes we're moving so fast to bring things to market that we skip certain steps. But how do you get that map, that understanding of your portfolio in a visual format? You know, I don't want to, even today I wouldn't want to read the binders anymore. It's time consuming. But how do I get a good understanding of my portfolio? So there's been multiple things that we've had to do more deep inspection, right? So we did a analysis of our portfolio using Cast Highlight to kind of give us the broad dimensionality of our application health across all of the applications, which is useful. And you can use that to determine which ones that you want to go after based on the business criticality of those applications. Now, there were a select few that, really were missing a lot of documentation, missing subject matter experts as well, because, people move on, they find other opportunities in their career. And, if you're lucky, someone was coming up behind to learn from them and became the next subject matter expert. That's not always the case. So what happens when you have a mission critical application and you don't have as many subject matter experts that understand the full end-to-end solution? They may understand satellites off of it, pieces of it, but they don't understand the end-to-end. And now you want to make a change to it. So, we brought in kind of the MRI capability a few times, one on a Java-based application to analyze it. And then another one was a really unique case. Cast didn't support the particular language. And I was talking with Avijit, and he talked to his architects and engineers, what would be the complexity of customizing a language understanding plugin so that we can do that same MRI analysis on more of a modern in vogue language like Java, but do the same thing in something like Visual Fox Pro or Power Builder and those types of things. And the team came up to the challenge, I want to say within 60 days, at most 90 days, we had a language understanding plugin that can read the code and analyze 1.5 million lines of code and put it into kind of that mind map, right? Like, what are all the interconnected components? How do things flow through each of the modules, and stitch it together in kind of that Google Earth view, right? You can kind of zoom out, what are the big components, and then zoom in, okay, this component calls this component, and stores information in this database. Now I can find the needle in the haystack. I'm not digging through mountains of hay trying to find the needle. Now I can thread the needle even, because I've got the intelligence that has created that dependency map that I didn't have before. The alternative, there's no modern IDE in some of these languages, so you're using text editors. And you could, I talked earlier about breaking out the bone chisels and the dust and trying to find the bones and be very, very careful not to break anything, because it's super important and it's critical. It's our history. And how do I go through and trace it in such a way? And I did do a little bit even that myself, reading the code and watching it. Okay, this one's calling this, find that module, pull it up. But it's so much more efficient to have a software intelligence tool do that for you. And then you can focus on which areas that you want to start going after. You can't boil the ocean. My number one recommendation would be identify those things that are most mission critical to you, and using that lens, use an efficiency play to allow you to do something with that, leveraging a software intelligence platform that will allow you to do it. I mentioned earlier when I started in IT, we did a boil the ocean. We're gonna do a complete mainframe rewrite. And I was part of the team that was brought in as the backup in the case that modernization didn't complete within 2 years, and it didn't. And it came smashing back to that platform because they tried to do it all at once. A complete rewrite of 10 million lines of mission critical COBOL code, right? And it was too much. And it was, the length of time to do that was in years. And you didn't get the benefit until it was complete. There wasn't milestones where the customer was improved, release after release. It was, you didn't get the payback until, 2000. This is Y2K, because we were doing Y2K, saving the world from the zombie apocalypse, as I like to say. And we didn't, 2 years later, again, like I said, it came smashing back to the platform. So what are the mission critical things? What are the things that differentiate you in the marketplace? Anything that isn't a system of differentiation that you bring to the table, can it be commoditized? Can those commoditized things be outsourced or off the shelf and modernized that way? And the things that really do differentiate you in the marketplace, because that's your critical secret sauce, focus on those, and then use software intelligence to get those things healthy.